Good evening. The Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh, or the RSS, is celebrating 100 years of its foundation. And it's traveled a long distance in the past 100 years, from being banned 3 times to having a Pracharak as Pradhan Mantri in his 3rd term. And someone who's chronicled the journey of the RSS over the past 60 years is with us on this stage. Professor Walter Andersen is, until very recently, was a professor at the Johns Hopkins University. He's been with the State Department in the United States for 30 years. He's taught at the Tungji University in Shanghai. Incidentally, before partition, he was in the US Foreign Service in Pakistan. So, and he's somebody who's really traveled. What drew him to RSS is something that we will talk about. He's interviewed every Sar Sangh Chalak from MS Golwalkar to Mohan Bhagwat. He's seen the journey, he's been through it, he's authored 2 books on the Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh, and now when the RSS, Professor, celebrates 100 years of its foundation, will they believe an organization that was banned 3 times has a Pracharak as Pradhan Mantri in his 3rd term?
Well, I want to thank people for inviting me to this event, for starters. And I often wondered when I watched this on television how it would feel to be on the stage. Now I know. It doesn't feel much different than sitting elsewhere. So thank you for inviting me. Now on the question of the RSS and where, with the Prime Minister who has an RSS background, I take it what you'd want me to really talk about was how the RSS sees itself in the Indian context. Let me say a little something about the formation. Actually, it was formed in 1925, and so hence, the 100 years of since its formation. From my understanding, and meeting Pracharaks who are full-time workers of the RSS, and meeting the various Sar Sangh Chalaks that you mentioned, the RSS basically has a major goal that it has in mind, and you heard that goal mentioned in the panel we had this morning on Hinduism, and the goal was unity. In a country as complex as this one, with all the languages that are spoken here in India, with a very complex caste system, with a class system that's emerging, how can you hold all of this together? That has always been the objective of the RSS. Initially, it was to create a cadre of young men. Later, it developed a women's equivalent, the Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh. So young men and women who would be motivated to bring about the independence of India. Now, to get to the topic of this conversation is its relationship to the government. It had basically, in the beginning, a rather tense relationship with the government, primarily because of a problem it had with the first Prime Minister, but there were other reasons as well. Obviously, since the emergence of the Bharatiya Janata Party, it has had a much more favorable relationship with the government. So in terms of how it relates to the government, that doesn't mean it doesn't have disagreements. There have been, and in fact, if you buy my book on the RSS, what I basically go is internal problems in several areas of the RSS where it has had disagreements which have been spelled out. So it's not as if you have a kind of quasi-dictator at the top who tells everybody what to do. You don't. In fact, I was always amazed in relating to people in the RSS the extent that you had internal divisions, debates that take place, including debates on how closely to be related to the present government in India.
So we'll come to those debates in just a moment. But, there's one debate, and since you mentioned within the RSS there are debates, with the government there are debates. Mohan Bhagwat, the Sar Sangh Chalak, after the Divya Bhavya Ram temple at Ayodhya, had spoken of the need not to look for a shivling under every mosque. within shakhas, and since you've interacted with a lot of RSS people, is everyone on the same page there, or are there some who think that this is civilizational justice that they seek? And does the RSS, I mean, does the decision making go top down, or is there some kind of an opinion that's sought from shakhas across the country?
Well, in terms of this particular view that he's expressed, there is division. I haven't, in interviewing for my various topics, because there were 7 topics I cover in the book, there wasn't a single one of them where there wasn't some kind of internal debate on the topic. Now, it helps one side or the other if the head of the RSS, the Sar Sangchalak, comes down on one side or the other. It tends to skew the debate in a particular area. Though this particular Sar Sangchalak has been very careful about taking sides and has preferred to try to work out a consensus. And basically, the RSS has been able to stay together, and this is really quite incredible for an organization that started in middle India, in Nagpur, among a few Brahmins in that city. It has expanded into something I don't think its founders would have considered to be, a realistic possibility for the future. It not only is India's ruling, its front group, one of its affiliates is India's ruling party, but it also governs, that party governs 19 of India's states and union territories. It has India's largest trade union, the Bharatiya Mazdoor Sangh. It has India's largest student group, the Vidyarthi Parishad. It has one of the largest farm groups, the Kisan Sabha. And it goes on. There are about 50 such groups. And in each of them, there tends to be a discussion on issues. And the issues I discuss in the book, there was very lively discussion of debate. But once a decision has been made, they're quite firm that they then should then follow the decision of the leadership and the collective sentiment of the RSS.
Founded in 1925, banned 3 times, now having a prime minister who's in his 3rd tenure. What's the ideology of the RSS? What seems to be working for the RSS and the BJP, its affiliate, that it remains in power, as you said, not just at the center for its 3rd term, but multiple states and 21, perhaps, if you take all the NDA alliance partners?
Well, in terms of what it's for, as I mentioned, it had unity of India is its major ideological framework. Why it's grown so fast, I think you're getting at. Why has it expanded in the way that it has? I think there are a couple of reasons. One has to do with the organization. This is a group that has focused on, or it has ever since the beginning with Dr. Hedgewar, that, they wanted a group in which you would create a sense of a family. In fact, the present Prime Minister has talked about that he was actually attracted to the RSS because it was a sense of a family that was absorbing him into the family. The RSS sort of looks at itself and its own role as basically creating a cadre who will lead the country in a certain direction. Now, it's often been accused of being authoritarian in doing so. I think that's an exaggeration. I don't think it's given up the notion of a debate. The BJP as a party and the RSS as an organization has always favored the notion of elections, and there have been elections in which its party lost. Remember, the BJP lost when Vajpayee had been the prime minister. So it was able to sort of get out of power and come back to power again. But the fundamental issue, the basis for its training in the Shaka, its local unit, is to create a sense of comradeship among the membership so that will last beyond their training, which tends to take place in their youth and teenage years and beyond. Now, it is a male organization, but there is a female equivalent. But there are about 60,000 Shakas of various kinds in India. And some of those shakas have male and female members. Most do not, but some do, particularly the occupational-oriented shakas.
So is it anti-women, as some make it out to be? And one of the criticism, so there is a lot of criticism that comes RSS's way. Anything that you say that RSS stands for unity of India. If it stands for unity, if it stands for, as you say, India's civilizational strength, why has it been targeted so extensively and banned 3 times?
Well, that's a complex question.
What's your understanding?
That's a complex question. It's about why it's been banned. The initial ban came, as many of you who are older probably know, because Nathuram Godse had once been a member of the RSS. He had left it to join the Hindu Mahasabha, and was actually much closer to the Hindu Mahasabha than to the RSS. And the Hindu Mahasabha, as some of you who follow this must know, had a very contentious relationship with the RSS, particularly after the time of Golwalkar became the Sarsanchalak. The RSS as a group, and it's looked at its future at that time, particularly after the Second World War, when things began to change in India a lot. That's at the point it began to establish its various affiliated groups, because it was locked out of politics and it was locked out of society by the ruling Congress party at the center. And in this, it was quite effective. And the point I want to get to is the chief effectiveness of it was organization. It knew how to train people. Its organizational system was really quite good. You have daily meetings with people who engage in a series, what they call baudik. It's for those of you who have a Christian background in Sunday school. Various churches had every Sunday a topic that you brought up. They have a similar thing. They have a baudik pramukh who decides a topic that's going to be discussed for a month or 2 months. And then they have a topic discussion at various levels of sophistication. Then they have games that are played, basically games that are meant to encourage kind of cooperation with each other. And then they have the beginning and the end, kind of pledge to the motherland. They also have a series of camps where they try to downplay the notion of caste. In fact, at a caste, a typical participant in a caste will do things at both ends of the traditional caste hierarchy. You may one day feed food to people and the other day wash their feet. So
that's very interesting, because one of the criticisms is that it's a Brahminical organization and it's pro-caste. You're saying it's anti-caste. So the caste system. Then does this successful Mahakumbh, where the Uttar Pradesh government takes pride in saying that close to 67 crore devotees took a dip together and there was no distinction of caste. Would you look at it as a successful civilizational move that they would have tried over decades and have reached a point, or is this temporary?
Well, as you may know, the RSS has always supported the Kumbh Mela celebration, including this one as well. Yes, that's exactly, you put it quite well. They look at its goal as one of bringing groups together. You even had some Muslim participants in the Kumbh Mela. Not many, but you had some, including some that was supported by its own Muslim-affiliated groups, the Rashtriya Manch. So that participated in it as well. In terms of, in terms of women, can you ever all hear me? In terms of women, it is, by and large, a male organization, but at certain levels of participation, it becomes a family organization. And it has foreign groups as well. There is an RSS affiliate in the U.S. and 33 other countries as well. And it's called the Hindu Swayamsevak Sangh. They are mixed male and female because they tend to be family-oriented. So they do have women participants.
The Hindu Swayamsevak Sangh, is that the reason for the RSS success overseas, and are some of their members extremely politically powerful in various countries?
Some are. In fact, you and I talked about some who had, were in parliament in various European countries. You have at least 2 American cabinet members who are Hindu, one of whom has had association with the HSS in the past. So yes, you have participation. In their overseas branches, one of the problems that people have raised about being in one of the overseas branches and being the kind of organization it was, is at least in India, it's India focused, to have a kind of unity of India, and the Indian equivalent of MAGA, is to, rather than making India great again, it's the kind of making the US great again. They would go along with that as well, because they tend to be, they focus on good citizenship overseas. They do this in every other country I'm aware of.
So, am I to understand that what you're saying is Donald Trump stands for Make America Great Again, you're saying the RSS stands for Make India Great Again. Is
Yes.
that what you're saying?
Yes. They, in short, they don't sort of put it that way, but that's exactly what they mean.
But what I want to understand from you is this relationship between, for example, Prime Minister Narendra Modi on one side and RSS Chief Mohan Bhagwat on the other side. How does this double engine work?
Usually well, not always. There are times there have been differences. There are times that there have been differences. And I'll give you a classic one that many of you may know about. When it came to labor issues and land issues. The government has favored a globalization development policy. Not all of the affiliate groups, or even in the RSS itself, are as enthusiastic about that focus on development. Some say that this overlooks the well-being of the individual, that it's too much of a focus on that. And so on issues where they can't come to an agreement, they can't come to a consensus, they put it off. And the land issue is one case where they put it off. Labor issue is another where they put it off until they could come to a consensus on how to handle it.
Now, when you look at the RSS, and one of the criticism that comes their way is that they're anti-minority or they're anti-Muslim. In your interaction and, beyond the RSS's Muslim munch, what has your understanding or appreciation been, Professor?
Well, I think you have to sort of note that the RSS is not a religious organization in the way we think of it. In fact, the kind of guide to Hindutva, the kind of Hinduism that it refers to, was Savarkar. And as most of you know, Savarkar was an atheist, very much of an atheist. And many of the, not many, but some of the RSS people I've interacted with have not been especially religious in the metaphysical sense of the term. What they focus on is creating a sense of pride in Hindu culture, the traditional culture of the country. And in fact, just the other day I was speaking to a person who raised this issue from the RSS. And he said, you know what I think about? And he said, to the group you're talking to, you can give this example. In Germany, Wagner is much appreciated. In fact, to a certain extent in Germany, to appreciate Wagner is to be German, is to establish a German identity. Because the themes of some of Wagner's works go back to the ancient German religious customs. But if you're a Roman Catholic or you're a Lutheran in Germany, do you feel that's a bad thing? No. You accepted it as something that you accept. So when they talk about, the Kumbh Mela or other celebrations, it's part of the traditional culture, whether or not you are religiously a Hindu or not.
So they look at Muslims as sons and daughters of this land who may have converted and traditionally are the same blood. Is that what your appreciation has been?
That's when I've talked to them, they say that, if you look at the genetic background of Muslims and Hindus and Christians in this country, they're basically like their neighbors. They're basically us. So the notion of race, which is what the Nazis used to distinguish themselves from others, that somehow to be uniquely German was a certain kind of bloodline, they said makes no sense in India to look at it that way.
So when some political leaders say they're like the Muslim Brotherhood of India, what is your understanding of the RSS?
Well, in and of itself, nobody would be worried by that as such. It depends on the purposes to which you use the Brotherhood. Now, they are worried, that if people begin to support Pakistan, the most obvious case. But by and large, Indian Muslims, have been rather loyal to this country as well. And there has been, at least that I'm aware of, no incident of any significance in which Muslims have taken steps that are anti-Indian.
Oh, you're absolutely right. I mean, whether it's, Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam or Abdul Hamid, that's been a big advantage. But when you look at the current controversy about Aurangzeb, how do you look at it? Is that an RSS narrative? Because you have a chapter in your book about Indianizing education. So, if we were taught in our class books that Aurangzeb was not cruel, and this intense fight back against that narrative, how do you look at that?
Well, I'm not sure, in the history books they use, but they tend to follow the history books that are recommended by the center as required, textbooks you use for various subjects. But where the cultural element comes in is what they do in outside activities where they celebrate Hindu customs. And they have a celebration where the teachers are honored. In fact, I have attended, for research purposes, a local shaka in the Washington, D.C. area where I live. And they invited me to go to a celebration where teachers are then given a Rakhi and are honored. And they did it for me. They didn't tell me they were going to do it. They did it. And I later said, why are you doing this? I haven't really done anything that really sort of, would merit this sort of thing. They said, well, you've written this book. We think it's an honest presentation. We didn't necessarily agree with everything you wrote, but we think it's a good idea you did it, and we gave you this honor for that. So, there's a tendency to honor teachers and as part of the educational goals that they have in mind.
You've also mentioned that the RSS had decided that BJP had to be brought to par. It put its shoulder to the wheel. 2013 elections, in 2013 and 2014 elections, the BJP did spectacularly well. Pradhan Mantri, Mr. Narendra Modi became Prime Minister. Even in 2019, what is your appreciation of what happened in 2024? And of course, subsequently.
Well, I've asked some RSS people since coming back to India, how do they explain that in the Lok Sabha election, the BJP vote went down several points, and it could not form a majority on its own. It needed allies in parliament to do that, which is certainly different from the first two elections when it had majority on its own. Whereas, and this they always point out to me, take a look at what happened in two significant state elections after that. In Haryana, what happened?
Haryana, Maharashtra, and now Delhi.
And Maharashtra and now Delhi. Is that the RSS in that case supported very enthusiastically the BJP. It did not necessarily do so before. I'm not going to get into why, because I've heard all sort of reasons as to why the RSS didn't. But one of them, I think, had to do with a mistake that a very significant person in the BJP made when he said, we don't need RSS support. Well, it turns out they did, in fact, need RSS support to get the kind of majority that they had hoped to get, and they thought they'd get, but didn't. After that, in the state elections, they did.
And so that's a lesson learned. Are they that way? They learn from mistakes, make corrections for the next battle?
Well, this wasn't their mistake necessarily. This was probably a mistake on the part of the BJP.
On the affiliate of the BJP.
Of the BJP, yes, and kind of saying, we don't really need you. Well, in fact, they proved that they really did need them, which gets to a point which, is the RSS political? It has often said, this stems from the time it was first banned, when it had to write a constitution that said it was a cultural organization. It has always been political from the very beginning. In fact, that you can quote me, always been political, in different ways. It never established made itself a political party, though in the 47-48 period, there were Pracharaks, full-timers of the RSS, who were advocating, like Balraj Madhok, who were advocating that the RSS turn itself into a political party. It rejected that. It said that would be a big mistake because it would introduce the issue of a religious connotation that we don't want. That in fact, our definition of Hindu, and I don't know how many people have said this to me, our definition of Hindu is it includes everybody. So when you hear Mohan Bhagwat, the present head of the RSS, talk of Muslims like as if they're Hindus, what he means by Hinduism is a kind of large ethnic group which has a culture which is rooted in this country.
I will let that be the last word on this special discussion. Professor Andersen, as always, many thanks for joining us here on this India Today platform to tell us more about the Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh and clearing a lot of doubts that people may have had about the organization.
I was going to say, I forgot to. I encourage you to buy my book because I think, you'll get a lot more there than you would have gotten in the half hour here. And it's called The RSS, A View to the Inside, and it's available at any bookstore in Delhi, I think. And if it's not, let me know and I'll make sure they get it.
Thank you very much, sir.